Hello and welcome to day 2 of solving absolute value equations. So on Friday we solved absolute value equations that were something like this. And we found out that we needed to always write two cases. X plus 3 equals 7 and x plus 3 equals negative 7, because from a number, the distance from this number, we can either go a positive 7 units or we can go a negative 7 units, and both of these places are equal distance away from the middle. So that's why we have a 7 and a negative 7. So we go ahead and solve this. So x equals 4 is one number, and when we subtract 3, we get x equals negative 10. So the two solutions here would be 4 and negative 10. All right, going into today, here's another absolute value equation, and we did not have any problems on Friday where we had a number outside of the absolute value, and I can see there's a typo in this one. This is supposed to be an equal sign right here, so I'll get that right here in the next problem. So on Friday, what we had told you is that you copy the problem just like it is. X plus 2 minus 5 equals 16. And the second case here is going to be x plus 2 minus 5 equals a negative 16. So let's go ahead and solve these. I'm just going to do the red one first because I have the red pen. So 2 minus 5 is going to be x minus 3 equals negative 16. And I'm going to add 3 and add 3. So I get x equals negative 13. All right, go back to the green one here. Same thing, 2 minus 5 is still a negative 3. So x minus 3 equals 16. I'm going to add 3 and add 3. So I get x equals 19. All right, let's just go back to the beginning and let's plug in this 19 in for x. So we'd have 19 plus 2 minus 5. Does that equal 16? Well, 19 plus 2 is 21, and the absolute value of 21 is 21. So 21 minus 5 is 16. Check. Yes, that works. All right, let's go try the red one and make sure that this one works. So we're going to go back and I'm going to plug it in, and I'm putting in a negative 13 plus 2 minus 5. Does that give me 16? Well, negative 13 plus 2 is a negative 11. And negative 11, so we have 11 minus 5. Does that equal 16? 11 minus 5 is 6. Does 6 equal 16? No, absolutely not. So that whole red problem must be wrong. Something about it is kind of fishy or weird. So what happens here in these absolute values, I mentioned at the beginning that when we did things on Friday, we never had a number outside of that absolute value. Your first job is to always make your equation say absolute value, whatever's on the inside, equals a number. You can't have any numbers in front outside of the absolute value or behind this absolute value. So our first job is always going to be to move this number to the other side. So the first thing I'm going to do is add 5 to both sides so that I end up with the absolute value of x plus 2 equals 21. Now I'm going to set up my two cases. X plus 2 equals 21 and x plus 2 equals negative 21. So when we subtract 2, we get x equals 19. So x equals 19 is the same answer we got in green first. So if you do forget this, you are always going to at least get one of your answers correct. It's the second answer that will be incorrect if you forget to do this step. So now if we subtract 2 and subtract 2, we get x equals negative 23. That is not the same answer that we got in red. In red, we got x equals negative 13. Now I'm getting a negative 23. Well, let's see what happens when we plug in negative 23 plus 2 minus 5. Does that give me 16? So negative 23 plus 2 is a negative 21. The absolute value of negative 21 is 21, and 21 minus 5 is 16. That's what we wanted to get. So it's not just automatically set up the two cases. You must have the absolute value by itself. So we're going to go through some sample problems here. And we can see that we have absolute value marks. And then I have a number outside of that. My first job is going to be always, always, always to move that number so that I have the absolute value equals and then just a number over here. So what I'm going to do is subtract 6 from both sides. So 10 minus 6 is 4. And we just leave whatever's inside the absolute value there. So we have x minus 3. Now I set up my two cases. So first, we always want to get absolute value by itself. Get absolute value by itself. Okay, that was our first job. Second, now I'm going to set up my two cases. Alrighty, so here we go. The first case that I'm going to set up is x minus 3 equals 4, no absolute values. And the second case is going to be x minus 3 equals negative 4. So now I'm going to go ahead and solve these. Add 3, add 3. So x equals 7. And over here, when we add 3 and add 3, x equals negative 1. So now we can go in and just check these to make sure that they work. So I'm going to check your first one here. I'm going to put a 7 in here. 7 minus 3 plus 6. Does that equal 10? Well, 7 minus 3 is 4, and the absolute value of 4 is 4. So 4 plus 6 equals 10. Check. Good. This one worked. Okay, now I'm going to go check my second one. So the absolute value, and now I'm putting in my negative 1 this time. So negative 1 minus 3 plus 6. Does that equal 10? So negative 1 minus 3 is the absolute value of negative 4. The absolute value of negative 4 is 4. 4 plus 6 is 10. Check. It worked. All right, so we did this right. We need to first get the absolute value by itself, then set up your two cases. All right, looks like we have a number in front this time. So I'm going to divide by 3, divide by 3. So I have the absolute value of x plus 7 equals 24 divided by 3 is 8. Now we have absolute value equals number. So I'm going to set up my two cases here. X plus 7 equals 8. And my second case is going to be x plus 7 equals negative 8. Now we're going to go ahead and solve. So subtract 7, subtract 7. So one of my solutions is x equals 1. And another solution, when I subtract 7 on both sides, remember to please use your calculator so you get these integer parts correct. Negative 8 minus 7 is a negative 15. So our two solutions are x equals 1 and x equals a negative 15. All right, going on here. Absolute value. Okay, it looks like I have a number in front and a number at the end. So if you remember, whenever we were doing the order of operations backwards, we always take care of the adding and subtracting first. So I am going to add 3 to both sides. So now I have a 2 absolute value x plus 4. This cancels out. That's the whole point of me doing it. And 19 plus 3 is going to be 22. Okay, I still don't have my absolute value by itself. So I'm going to divide by 2, and I get the absolute value of x plus 4 equals 11. Okay, now I have my absolute value equals number. So I can set up my two cases. X plus 4 equals 11, and x plus 4 equals negative 11. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. So it looks like I have x equals 7. Subtract 4. So it looks like I have x equals negative 15. So whenever we have a number in front and at the end, take care of your adding and subtracting first. All right, next problem. Okay, we have no number in front, but I have a number here at the end. Okay, absolute value. So I'm going to get rid of that negative 1. So I do that by adding 1 to both sides. So I have absolute value of 2x minus 4 equals, oops, that was a plus 1, so we have 22. All right, absolute value equals number. So I'm going to set up 2x minus 4 equals 22. And I have 2x minus 4 equals negative 22. We always have two cases with that plus 22 and minus 22. So remember, of order of operations for solving, I'm going to add 4. So I have 2x equals 26. Divide both sides by 2. So one answer looks like it's going to be x equals 13. Okay, now I'm going to add 4. So it looks like I have 2x equals, that's going to cancel out, and negative 22 plus 4 is a negative 18. Divide by 2. So x equals negative 9. So our two solutions here are 13 and negative 9. All right, I think this is the last problem I have going on here. So it looks like I have absolute value. Oh, we don't have any numbers after or in front. So absolute value equals negative 8. So some of you are going to go right here and say x plus 7 equals negative 8 and x plus 7 equals a positive 8. And you're going to subtract 7 and you're going to tell me the answer is negative 15. And you're going to subtract 7 and tell me the answer is 1. So let's just put in a 1 in here. If we put a 1 in here and we say the absolute value of 1 plus 7, does that give you a negative 8? Will you ever take the absolute value and get a negative number? And the answer is no. So we really don't need to do any of this work right at the beginning. When you say absolute value equals negative number, we're going to say no solutions. So make sure that you are always paying attention that when you're taking the absolute value. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have x plus 2 minus 2 equals a negative 5, we can't do that. You need to first move this. And because we are going to be adding, I think that's a 7. If we're going to be adding 7 to both sides, now we have the absolute value equals a positive 2, and we can go ahead and solve that. So make sure you have it down to the absolute value equals a number. See, in here, when we have this negative 7 here, by the time I move it to the other side, that side gets positive. But in this first example here, it's just a negative 8, and we don't have anything to do there. All right, good luck on your assignment today. So it's in Schoology, Absolute Value Equations, Day 2.